From the Pacific Bath Company studio, it's the Mark Mason Show.
Well, it's time for our Salem Insider. This is the one I've been waiting for all week, all session, as a matter of fact. Jeff Newgard joins us again, who's a lobbyist for PacWest Communications. He steals away to a secret location to give us all the inside stuff, what's going on in Salem. But, you know, that light at the end of the tunnel didn't turn out to be a train. I can't believe how fast everything came together here in this last week, in this last 24 hours, Jeff.
So it's really been crazy. So to put it into perspective, so the legislators started their week last week on Monday, and they've been working ever since. And that includes the past couple of days. They've been working late into the evenings. Now we're talking 9, 10 o'clock at night, starting early in the mornings. They're in a mad dash to get to the end here.
Did some of them make a beeline for the door and get the hell out of Dodge?
I think that there were probably a couple that left as soon as they could.
Yes, indeed. All right, but let's talk about the big one to me, or at least the first shoe to drop that was a big one, was the transportation package. That was huge.
And I believe we talked about this a little bit last week, but on Friday night they released the contents of what the new package was, and we talked a little bit about that. What they did is they went and they reduced some of the numbers and some of the taxes, so then that way the package wouldn't be as big, trying to make it more palatable for all of the stakeholders to accept and to make it a bipartisan package. The committee then met on Saturday and took the first vote on the transportation package, and the committee voted 12-2. So it was a very strong vote in support of the package. And then throughout the week this week, and I believe one of the votes was actually on the 4th of July, the legislature started moving it through the process, and now it's sitting on the governor's desk.
All right. And this money will all go to transportation. It can't be purloined for anything else, correct?
That is correct. And they have been very particular about making sure that the money goes directly to road projects and bridges.
Okay. Now, but let's talk about the elephant in the room. This was necessary because a lot of that money that would have gone to this, that people pay into the kitty and in whatever way every year, is going to pay off PERS, isn't it? So they needed this transportation package to cover the back end.
Well, not necessarily. So in Oregon, the way that the state funds transportation projects is primarily through gas tax, and gas tax dollars can't go towards pensions or other state services. They're direct funds for those programs. And that's one of the nice things about transportation taxes, and in particular the gas taxes, that our Constitution says that the money has to be used for transportation projects. So the PERS conversation, while it's still a big conversation out there, is really not related to the money that's going here. I think the conversation that people can have is that in the time that the legislature has gone and designed and voted on this transportation package was time that the legislature wasn't spent addressing the PERS concerns, and that's a fair concern.
Okay, well, you know what? That's good to know. Do you know anything about the tolls on I-5 and 205? Is there any more information other than they're going to ask the federal government before the end of the year to toll those two freeways?
Well, really, that's the big question that's going to be lingering out there for a while. In order for the state to go and actually toll the freeways, the feds have to come in and give approval. And the federal government has been reluctant to give approval for states to go and put tolls on freeways that are already built. Usually, tolling is set up for new infrastructure, new highways and bridges and whatever. And so it'll be interesting to see how the federal government responds. Lately, the federal government has been fairly slow in responding to anything from the states, especially with everything that's going on in D.C.
All right. Literally last night, Democrats passed a gun control measure. I'm very curious if the strategy was to pass it late at night when the news cycle had wound down. Tell me about it.
Well, one thing to keep in mind with the Oregon legislature is that there's always this dull period or a lull period that we've been experiencing it for the past month or so, where there hasn't really been that much moving through the process. And a big part of that is the wheeling and dealing as they're trying to go and negotiate the budget process. So the gun bill was one that slipped its way out last night. What's interesting on the gun bill is usually, or at least the past 4 or 5 years in the legislature, when there's been a gun bill, it's moved out of one chamber and died in another. It's usually been more of a symbolic vote than anything else. But this year, it actually had bipartisan support in the Senate, which allowed it to start moving through the process. It's a controversial bill, and there's going to be especially some rural Democrats that will have to answer to it as soon as the election cycle begins.
And what does the gun bill entail?
So the gun bill would allow someone to go and get a court order for what's called an extreme risk protection order. So if someone was at risk of suicide and had guns in their possession, if the order was accepted, law enforcement officials would be able to go and seize those weapons.
I like the idea, and writing it looks good. It's going to be hard because it's one of those things is how do you decide someone is incapable? And that'll be difficult, but I'm going to follow this and watch this, and let's hope that indeed it is effective for all the right reasons here. And then finally, we balanced a budget on cuts and without significant new revenue. I mean, all that hand-wringing and all the angst and all the crying, was that just for show or was it for real?
Well, I would say it's both. What ended up happening is we walked into session with the state to go and continue the programs that it had at what's called the current service level was going to be $2.7 billion. We had $1.5 billion in additional revenue, but the amount that current services were going to cost was more than double or almost double. So the legislature had some tough decisions to make. Now, one of the ways that we've been talking about is there's really three ways that the budget was balanced. You had the Medicaid taxes that were approved a couple of weeks ago. Then you had some rather significant spending cuts to non-essential state programs, and then you had quite a bit of luck. Now, remember, back probably about a month or two ago, we had a state revenue forecast from our economists that said that the state was going to collect an additional $400 million in revenue that it wasn't expecting before. Now, that's really the big point in balancing the budget. If the legislature still had to go and find $400 million either in new revenue or cuts, that conversation would have been really hard. So that's where the luck kicks in.
All right. What a run. What a rally. And it's all done. And that means you're all done, I think, for a little while anyway. At least you can breathe. What are you going to do the rest of the afternoon in Salem?
So first off, one thing that's interesting, people assume that with lobbyists, when the legislature is done, that we go and we take a 10, 12-week vacation to somewhere across the world. No, the work starts right after we're done. Agencies have to go and implement all the bills that the legislature passed. And that's actually where a lot of our work goes for the rest of the year. Now, I am going to take a week off to go and try to gather myself after how crazy this session has been. But the work never stops in Oregon.
Well, I hope we talk to you again. Let's stay in touch and keep doing this periodically when we have things happening down there. Because, Brad Ford over in the newsroom, that guy's so overworked. He can't, I have to go to you for the real details because you really know what's going on. So I'm glad you're on our side. All right, Jeff Newgard, I'm just teasing Brad. A lobbyist for PacWest Communications, our Salem Insider. The session is over. Hallelujah. Appreciate you being on the Mark Mason Show.
Great to be here, Mark.